All right, we're going to get started. Thank you so much for joining me today on this Hunchly desktop training session. Just a couple of house cleaning items. The first is you should be able to hear me loud and clear and see my screen. I'm not able to troubleshoot any audio or video issues moving forward, but this will be recorded. It's being recorded right now, and it will be posted to our YouTube channel, which I will provide at the end of the session. Please use your question and answers box to ask me any questions as I'm moving through the session. Feel free to jump in at any time with those questions. It doesn't have to be specifically to what I'm covering on screen. Anything that pops to mind, I will do my best to answer for you here live. Otherwise, feel free to send me an email afterwards, or I can reach out. And with that, we're going to get started. So looking at my screen right now, I have the Hunchly dashboard open. So Hunchly is kind of a two-part system. There's what we're looking at right here, which is the Hunchly dashboard. This is where most people start. So when you first install it, you get this nice little Hunchly dashboard icon on your desktop, and that's where generally people start. And the other part lives in our web browser. And when I say web browser, I mean anything that is Chromium based. So we support Google Chrome, Chromium, Microsoft Edge is also now Chromium based, as well as the privacy centered Brave browser. So Hunchly does not work on Safari or Firefox. It's not because we don't want it to, it's just that those browsers don't support our method for capturing web pages. So the first step when you're kind of looking at Hunchly, this dashboard is kind of telling you all of the materials that you've collected, and everything is broken up into cases. So when you first start Hunchly, you always have this unassigned case here, and it's just a default placeholder. But like any good investigator, you want to keep your cases separate. So the first step is we're going to create a new case. Okay, very simple. And in our demos, we generally investigate me for maximum embarrassment. And that's it. That's all that's required, really. You can minimize the dashboard, and you can open up your Chrome browser. And now this is where Hunchly lives and does most of its work. Hunchly's job is to follow you around while you're doing your investigative work, and it's preserving every page that you view, timestamping it, and storing it on disk. Okay? So when we look up in the right-hand side, we see the little Hunchly icon here. Now, if you don't see it, I'll show you what this can look like if you have it installed, but you don't see the icon. By default, Chrome has this little puzzle piece, and if you click that, click the pin beside Hunchly 2, this will keep Hunchly here in your extension bar so you can always see it. Now, by clicking on Hunchly, there's only a couple of mouse clicks required to get started. One is this capture toggle. So if I turn capture off, and this is our automatic capture, you'll see that Hunchly is grayed out. It's got a red kind of no capture going on icon over top of it. And when I turn it on, it is now enabled. This means that it is ready to do its job. As I go moving through URL to URL, Hunchly is going to be preserving them. So there's your one mouse click here. And the other thing is we just want to make sure we're working on the right case. Now, if you ever store pages in the wrong case, not a big deal. You can move them inside of the dashboard. That's no problem at all. But really, this is all that's required to get started in Hunchly. You got a couple of mouse clicks in the dashboard to start a new case, turn on the capture, pick the case, and you're ready to go. So now I'm going to train you how to do some actual evidence capture. And that's it. So that's all that there is to it. The act of browsing to google.com triggered the capture in Hunchly. It will have captured this Google page, timestamped it, hashed it, stored it on disk on my local machine. So there's no cloud storage. We actually don't collect any metrics or any other information about your browsing history or anything else. It's all stored all on your local machine. So Google itself is not too useful. Let's punch in my name. Great. So again, because I've moved on to this page, Hunchly will have created a new capture. It's preserving all of the links, the text, everything we see here, including all of the images. So my ugly mug there, some pictures of books I've written in the past. All of this is actually captured automatically for us. So if we switch back to the dashboard, we can now see that we have some information here, pages viewed, that we've done one search, and we'll cover searches a little later on. And this history view is extremely useful. This is giving us that breadcrumb trail of every page that we have visited during this investigation. So we can see here that we've covered 2 pages, quite a complex investigation. And by clicking on one of these pages, it brings us into our page review screen. Okay, this is where you can actually review any of the captures that you have. So this is kind of, again, if you're thinking of like a good metaphor, is really, this is like your own little Wayback Machine, where you can, all of the things that you've browsed to are captured for you, and you can come in here and view captures that you've taken. This, what you're looking at, is loaded from my hard drive. It is not being pulled from the internet. Hunchly does not make a connection to the internet on its own ever, unless you configure it to specifically do that. And so the great thing is that 6 months from now, I can open this page capture and it's always going to look like this. So if somebody has deleted something, removed a social media profile, anything like that, if we've seen it while we were doing this work with Hunchly, we are always going to have a copy of it. So this is really important, particularly for people who work in law enforcement, is being able to go back and say, I have this content and it's permanently captured on my hard drive. And speaking of which, if you're thinking about having to ever present some of this evidence in court, all of the key questions can be answered from here. So what did I see, which is the content? Where did I see it, the URL? And by clicking this show button, I have additional metadata that tells us when I saw it, so a timestamp and a date. And I also have a hash. So what this allows me to do is, if I need to submit this page as evidence for a hearing or for some type of civil proceeding, I can export this page, which we will cover later. I can send it to a third party, provide that hash, and then they are able to validate on their side by hashing it as well and say, yep, the act of you disclosing this material has not altered it from your original copy. Okay, so these are all really crucial things, particularly when we're dealing with materials that have to go into court. You want to be able to talk about these things. And really, this is, again, one of those core fundamental things that Hunchly does, is it removes that burden from you of having to manually take screenshots or capture the URL or write a handwritten note in a logbook of when you saw something. All of that stuff is captured and stored for you, so you will always know when you saw this page and what the content itself was. Okay, now you also notice this updated timestamp, and in this case you can see it's the same as the original capture time. However, where this updated timestamp becomes important is when you're scrolling through a social media profile, for example. And while you're scrolling down, more and more content is being altered, added, or removed from the page. And so Hunchly will continue to update the same capture up to 30 minutes. After that, it will create a new capture and start updating that one. And this updated timestamp will tell you the last time that this capture was updated. So here it's the same, because when Google loads a search result, it loads the entire page all at once. There's no kind of dynamic scrolling or anything like that that occurs. So this is why you see the same timestamp here. All right. Does anyone have any questions so far about capturing pages, some of this page review stuff, anything like that that I can help to answer before I move on? I'll give you all like 10, 15 seconds to punch in a question. Use that question and answers box if you like. Nothing? Okay, great. So that's how we capture pages. And again, largely it's just the act of you browsing around is going to do this for you. All right, perfect. So we do have one question. Can we choose different formats? So are you referring to the format of how you would, for example, like if you need to send a page to a colleague, being able to change the format of that page? Yeah, so Hunchly does support, we'll cover exports later on, supports exporting in MHTML and PDF for the page captures. You can also produce reports in PDF and Microsoft Word. Okay. So, yep, definitely you can get those out. And I know PDF is the general kind of format that people like. We'll discuss a lot of that later on. Perfect. Okay, so again, just the act of browsing around is going to take care of capturing those pages for you. And that is really the core thing that Hunchly is known for, is giving you that automatic capture system, giving you that nice preservation trail of everything you've done. Now we can talk about some of the investigative and organizational tools that Hunchly has to make your life easier and make you a more thorough investigator. So the first one is selectors, one of my favorites. So selectors are simply keywords that you can use that Hunchly will look for everywhere that you're browsing. So for example, selectors can be anything from a name, okay? They can be a social media username, for example. They can be an email address, a location, anything that you want Hunchly to keep track of. And every investigation has some form of a selector. There's always some piece of information that's, you're either looking at an individual, a company. There's always something that is kind of one crucial key to your investigation. So the first thing that happens when you add a selector to Hunchly is you can see that it's got this count value here, right here, this count column. And what's happening is Hunchly takes a brand new selector that you've entered and it will search backwards through your case looking for it to call to your attention whether you might have already encountered it. Now, we've only captured 3 pages, and this is obviously the world's shortest investigation, but when you're looking at doing something for weeks or even months and you enter in a new email address and you see that count number go up, that's telling you that you actually had encountered that email address at some point in the past. And you can kind of start looking through your history to see where you might have spotted that particular selector. You can also click on it to make your job easier. So you can click on a selector. It's going to filter your history view to only show you the pages that had Justin Seitz on it, for example. Very useful. The other thing that's going to happen now is every page I browse to, everywhere I go, Hunchly is going to be scanning the underlying source code of every page, looking for these selectors, and will automatically mark the pages with those hits as you go. So this is extremely useful. It's kind of like having your own little robot running Control F on your keyboard constantly, looking for all of these little terms that you're interested in. Now, before I jump back to the browser to show you how this works, I also want to show you one setting that some of you may be interested in. So if we go into our settings panel, right here we have highlight selectors. Okay, so highlight selectors, what this will do is in your browser, as you are browsing, it will actually highlight in yellow where those selector hits live. So this can be useful to kind of draw your attention to certain spots on a page, for example, if you're scrolling through, long forum posts, or, if you're looking through SEC filings or whatever it might be, is really useful because it will bring those terms to your attention. And the couple of options we have here are on. So this will take the highlighting and actually store it permanently in your evidence. Generally, our law enforcement customers don't want this. They don't want the highlighting to be kind of in their evidence. So you'll pick on remove before storing. So it just strips the highlighting out before it stores it. I'm going to set mine to on so you can see what this looks like. Cool. So if we go back even a page here, and this is actually something I'll point out here. So Hunchly relies on this two-way communication between itself, kind of what you see in the browser and the backend. And you can see there's no highlighting going on. This can also be because the settings can take a bit to synchronize. So typically what I'll do is I will just simply punt the browser, kill it, and just go back to where I was to make sure that the settings get applied right away. So generally speaking, when I'm investigating, I already have all my settings set the way I want. I don't have to do this. But if you make settings changes on the fly and you're not seeing them show up right away, just kill the browser and reopen it to force that synchronization. And now you can see it's very obvious where some of the selector hits are, right? And much the same way as we browse around, we're going to see selector hits getting highlighted on pages as we move along. And if we switch back over to our dashboard, for example, we can see that highlighting is stored. So this is what I mean when you have it turned on, the highlighting is going to be stored in your evidence. So depending on the type of work you do, you may or may not want to use that setting. I use it personally when I'm not doing stuff that's going to end up in court, if I'm just doing research, but I use that on remove before storing when I'm doing anything that that I know is going to end up in court at some point. Okay, so much the same way, we have that ability to kind of browse around, do our thing, and Hunchly is going to be tracking those hits for us using those selectors. Another useful thing If you're in kind of investigating a group of people or a gang, for example, so Esme is my cat, what can be useful is you can actually use selectors as a bit of an analysis tool. So what I can say is I can click two selectors and say, show me the pages where both of these names show up on the same page. So this might be a corporate registration that's got, two co-directors. It could be two people talking to each other on social media. In this case, of course, Esme's not internet famous yet, so she's not showing up. But this can be really useful to kind of mix and match those selectors as an analytical tool. Okay. Any questions about selectors, how to use them? Any kind of thoughts around, why they're kind of important that you need me to clarify? I'll give you again 10-15 seconds for y'all to punch a message in, and I will take a sip of coffee. It doesn't look like there's any. Great question. Can you color code selectors? So this is something we are really we've heard lots from. So we have tickets already filed to look at color coding selectors, both for the highlighting and even just being able to color code them here in the history view, so you can kind of see them stand out. So we have tickets filed. I'll make sure to tell my team that we have another vote for color coded selectors. Currently, you can't do that. Perfect. Yes. So the next question is, can you do emails, phone numbers, etc.? Yes, you can, definitely. So the trick with phone numbers, however, is that a phone number can be written like this. It can be written like this, right? So what I do when I'm dealing with phone numbers is I actually just use the last four digits. So if this is the last four digits, or this is the last four digits of the phone number, I'll use that. Now, this may give you some false positives because 5555 might be a number that you run into, in other places. But phone numbers are notoriously hard to match against, and particularly like thinking back to doing human trafficking research, back when Backpage was being used a lot, I saw a ton of very creative ways that people were writing phone numbers, even phonetically. So that's how I will deal with phone numbers. But yeah, of course, any other, this will work. Email addresses, all of that will work. And our last webinar that I did last week, we showed how someone who does mobile malware analysis actually uses selectors in a bunch of different ways to kind of track everything from pieces of code that a malware will use to hashes of malware, all kinds of stuff. So very interesting way of using selectors, and I believe they had like 50 or 70 of them loaded. You can bulk add them from a spreadsheet, for example. So yeah, definitely, it's very flexible, but it's exact match. So there's no wild carding or regular expressions or anything. It's an exact match. That's how it works. Yeah, so how do we set up a standard selector group? You can't set up standard selectors because they're generally case specific. But what I do have customers, so what they do is they have a spreadsheet, and you literally just drag down the column in your spreadsheet and pop them in here. So if I open like Hunchly's dark web report from today, I don't know what's going on. Oh, the little Microsoft News banner popped up there. So I'm just going to grab a bunch of these. So there, I just copy and pasted some hidden service URLs from the Hunchly dark web report today, and then I hit save. It will bring all of those in as selectors. So I do have customers who use a spreadsheet of selectors that they kind of are adding, or even a Google sheet that their whole team updates, and then you can just go down that column and drop them straight into here. Okay. All right. No other questions? Just double check here. Nope, looks good. Perfect. So let's talk about tags next. Tags are a way to keep your cases organized and help you to kind of track your more complex investigations where you might have, social media, business records, all kinds of stuff that, if you have 2,000 pages stored in a case, it's much simpler to have pages tagged so that you can find them easily. And later, we can also do page exports based on tag. So it will make your life a lot easier as well if you're looking to just produce the PDFs of a certain type of pages or stuff that was interesting, much simpler. So what we can do here is just create some tags. So I'm going to create a social media tag. You can really get as creative as you want here, and these can be standardized. So you can actually have on your, if you have a team of people, you can actually create a standard list of tags as well. So let's just, I don't know, we'll put something as like corporate records, awesome. And if you want standard tags, you can actually do that in your settings panel. Okay, so down here we have default tags, and you can put them in here. So you can create a social media tag. And what this will do is anytime you create a new case, you're already going to have that social media tag or corporate records or whatever. So if you have a team of people, and we do have some very large teams that use Hunchly, these default tags can be useful because then you all have standardized cases that people are tagging their investigative materials under. So that can be really useful. If you're in an enterprise environment, you can actually have one person create all of these settings, tags, these kind of default items. You can export that file and have that settings file imported to all of those users. So we do have information on how to do some of that in our knowledge base as well. All right, so we've got some tags created. Now let's head back, do some more browsing. We'll see if LinkedIn will obey. Oh, security check. This might not be good. Okay, let's see what we got. The correct way up. All right. Decent. All right, that was pretty painless. Cool. So we can see the selector highlighting working. We can scroll down again, LinkedIn, if you didn't know this. And if there's a lot of you on here that do Instagram work, I can also show you some tricks and stuff to kind of work around Instagram's weird way of loading and unloading content. So feel free to let me know if that's you in the Q&A box. You can see how these images are lazy loaded in. This is important to note that lots and lots of web services now are lazy loading content in, or they're loading and unloading content. So if you ever see weird captures where you're like, hey, why didn't this capture look right, or is something weird going on? Number one, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help. But the other thing too is just thinking about these lazy loading, sometimes scrolling, you have to kind of pay attention to like the fact that those images don't pop in until you scroll down. Now, LinkedIn is definitely a social media site. As I head up over to the browser extension, I'll also show you that you see that little red badge there. It's got the number 1 in it. That's just telling me I have a selector hit on the page. So if you don't have the highlighting on, that little red badge is telling you have a selector hit, and you can click here to see it. Okay. But in this case, I actually want to go into tags, and I just want to mark this as social media. That's it. So developing a bit of muscle memory around this as you are, browsing around and doing your work, that these tags will save you a lot of headache later on if you're doing complex investigations, or you find your investigations are getting into the hundreds or even thousands of pages. It will make your life a lot easier to have things tagged, just simply so you can go back and find it. All right, so what does this look like here? We can see our social media tag now has 1 tag page. We can see the tag showing up here. Much the same way, it's nice to be able to just click that tag, and our history view is now filtered to show us specifically that these are only the pages tagged with social media. You can get real fancy and start building up more complex filters. So you can say, show me any pages that were social media that included Justin Seitz as a selector hit. You can mix and match tags and selectors. You can also have a single page tagged with more than 1 tag. Totally fine. Now, if you ever come across a page where, let's just go into this page as an example, and you're like, oh, I should have tagged this with social media or corporate records, you can always, from your page review screen, come in here and tag or untag pages. Okay, so very simple to do that in here. If you mistakenly tag something or didn't tag something, you can always retroactively go back and do that. All right. And the other thing is we have kind of this super tag that's mark page is important. So as you're investigating, you find something really interesting or you feel is a critical piece of information. I use this functionality. Not everybody does, but I can mark a page as important. So right beside the case dropdown, we have this gold star. I click it. This is marking this page as important. Later on, again, I will show you when we export, we're able to actually export pages that are marked important as well. So if I'm working in teams of people, I'll often tell people like, hey, just go through and mark the pages that you thought were really important, because when I import their case, I can just smack this one button, and this filter button right here is going to show me only the pages that investigator thought were important. Okay, so this will be one of the first places I'll head. All right, so it works much the same way as other tags. It's just a one button click, and same thing in here. If I want to set or unset a page as important, I can do it from right here. All right, cool. Any questions about tags, how to use them, the default tag list, anything at all? I'll give you all 10-15 seconds again to punch in a question, and I again will take another sip of coffee. Got to stay warm in this minus 33 Celsius down there weather. Whew. All right, so we have a question here. Where was page review? Yep, so page review is just by clicking on anything in your history view. So clicking on that will bring in the page review screen. Clicking this show button will give you more kind of metadata about that page, allow you to tag and untag things. All right, so that's again, your history view is where you're able to see the pages you've captured, and by clicking on them, you're able to see exactly what you saw. All right, perfect. No other questions, it seems. Yeah, definitely. I'll show the Instagram workaround for sure. We can do that right now. Absolutely. So Instagram. Let's head over to Instagram and I'll show you what I mean. I'm actually just going to pause my stream for 1 second. Oh no, I'm already logged in. Great. Okay, so we're on Amber Mac's profile. And this is much the same as Twitter, Facebook as well. So watch this. As I scroll down, so she's got this surface pressure image. So kind of keep that in your mind, this image right here on the left-hand side, and Norton's on the right. So we're going to scroll down. All right, and we're scrolling, and we're scrolling. Cool, right? Yep. Now, what you would expect is as I'm scrolling down, right, we're creating one nice big long capture in Hunchly that has all of these images that we've seen, right? And we would anticipate that the top image on this page would be that surface pressure one on the left and Norton on the right. So Hunchly is capturing. We can see it doing its thing over there. That's great. I'm still scrolling. Now let's go take a look at the page review screen. I really find that news widget annoying in Windows, by the way. Hey, look, and we got a selector hit for 5555. All right, so what do we expect to see? One big long capture with all of our images. So what is going on here, right? Look at that. We're just scrolling and it's all just gray. There's nothing there. And then boom. Now all of a sudden we have captures where we kind of left off on the page, right? So this actually isn't a bug in Hunchly, because what Hunchly is doing is updating the same capture up to 30 minutes. And this stuff is what was available on the page when the last capture was triggered, right? As we were scrolling down. Now, why is this? So what Instagram is doing is a sleight of hand trick, much like a magician. So as you scroll down, it's actually unloading images at the top and bringing new images in that you can see visually. So the reality is Instagram's only actually ever got 12 to 16 pictures on the page at any given time. But they use this sleight of hand trick to give you this impression you're scrolling down, you see the scroll bar is getting smaller and the page is getting bigger. But in reality, all they're doing is filling the screen with gray area and loading and unloading pictures. Now, as I scroll back up, what's happening is they're loading the images back in that we saw at the top when we were here, right? And no matter how fast we scroll, we can never catch them doing it. You actually have to use your Google Chrome developer tools and a couple of tricks to actually catch this in action, right? So it's just a way for them to kind of manage bandwidth and also manage the resources that your browser uses. If you've been doing this a while, you'll remember a few years ago when you would capture a Facebook or Instagram profile and you'd be scrolling down, your browser would eventually start to slow down. Your fan would turn on your laptop. And that's because you had this huge single page that had like thousands of pictures and comments and stuff in it. And that would slowly start to consume the memory in your browser. So how do we deal with this in Hunchly, right? Because generally speaking, we at least want all of these pictures as we're browsing. So here's the trick. And I'm going to have to do a settings change. So I just killed my browser. All right. In our settings, what we have here is page capture sensitivity. And it's set by default to major changes only, right? Which works for 90% plus of the internet. However, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, what we need to do is set it to all changes. Okay, and we click save. Okay, we only have one capture here right now. Just keep an eye on that. So just one capture. I'm going to open this back up and I'm going to head back to Instagram. Okay, so now with that settings change in place, as I scroll down, instead of Hunchly updating the same capture, it's actually going to create new captures, which is going to include the pictures that are coming in and going out. So we're not losing anything, but we're also not getting one single big, nice long capture, because that's not actually how Instagram works anymore. There is no such thing as a single long page of Instagram. It's actually stuff that's added in and removed out. Okay. So as we scroll down, and I'll just show you in the dashboard now, look at all of the captures we have. Okay, we have tons of amber matte captures now. But the great thing is that we will always have all of the pictures that we wanted. So here you can see we're actually catching this as they were loading in the new stuff. We can actually catch that kind of sleight of hand trick that they're doing. And then I can actually move forward and backwards through my captures if there's a particular post of interest that I'm after, right? So I can go through and look through my Instagram captures at stuff that I needed or images that I wanted. So if you ever run into a situation where you're kind of browsing and you're like, hey, wait a second, like where did that content go? Or you see that trick where they're filling the page with gray pixels, great thing to do is just stop and go, right. It's that trick where they're loading and unloading content off the page. You can go in and set that setting to all changes. How I do it is if I need to jump into Instagram for a long period of time, or Facebook, Twitter, then I'll turn that setting on. I turn it back off after I'm done. Otherwise, as you'll see shortly, I use notes and other techniques to capture stuff of interest. Okay. So it's the same for Twitter. I don't actually know for TikTok if they do that as well. It would definitely be something that you would have to test. All right, let's see. I got a couple of questions here from that little demonstration. Kijiji was giving me the similar issue, not catching all the for sale items. So it could very well be the same issue. Kijiji, for those of you who are not in Canada, is a classified website, much like Craigslist or similar, that's very popular here in Canada. So definitely you can check that setting and see if that helps to fix the Kijiji capture issues as well. And you're very welcome, Angela, no problem. Great. So that's how to address that. If you ever run into that issue, we are working on a much longer term solution for that whole problem, and it will be a long-term solution. So look down the pipe for about a year or two, as Hunchly is making some pretty, we're doing some really interesting stuff to help kind of alleviate most of the common problems that we see investigators running into. All right. Any other questions before I move on? Doesn't look like it. Cool. All right, let's talk about notes. So I use notes a ton. Many of our customers use them a lot. I recommend you use them a lot. They are a way for you to contextually capture what's on screen at the time and to be able to add context to it. So for example, if I'm generally on Instagram briefly or Twitter, or I need to capture something quickly, what I see in the screen that's of interest to me, I'll right click on the page. In the Hunchly 2 menu, I say take note. All right, so Amber Mac commercials, perfect. And I'll hit save. Now I do this when I discover a new social media account relevant to my target, when I discover a critical piece of information. I even will kind of use them as a quasi to-do item sometimes. And what happens when you do this is that Hunchly takes a screenshot of what's loaded in your browser, triggers a full page capture behind the scenes, and also stores that note that you've taken. So now in my notes view, I have this great chronologically ordered list of notes that I've taken as I've been browsing. So this is really useful. It's a primary way that you can help build reports in Hunchly. It's a great way to be able to, for example, if you're a journalist and you just need to get a quick pitch out to your editor, you can kind of take a few notes and you can export them out to a PDF and send them off. So it's also a great way if you're ever encountering a weird website that's unloading content or doing all kinds of crazy stuff or like giving you pop-ups or whatever it might be. Get the content you want, take that note, and it will link it back to a full page capture, and you can explain what you're seeing in the note context right here. All right. Now, if you're ever doing page review and for some reason you don't see, let's take a look down here. I'll just find here. We'll take this one. So again, and I didn't take a note here, even though this was like a critical account, right? What I can do is from this page review screen, I can click right here, add note, Justin's LinkedIn account, and it will do the same thing. It will take a screenshot of the viewable area in the preview window, create a note, and that note will be linked back to this page capture. Okay? Just like that. Extremely useful. Extremely useful. I use them. There's not an investigation that I don't use selectors and notes. Those are the two big things that I use consistently every time I pick Hunchly up. And I definitely recommend it as well. It's also much, much nicer that I call it the Friday to Monday problem. So Friday, I'll leave to go play a volleyball tournament. I'll go beat my body up all weekend long. Monday, I sit back down at my desk. I have no recollection of where I was, where I left off in my investigation, what I was looking at. This quickly allows me to get back up to speed and kind of get my brain back into that what was I doing mode and get me back into my investigation again. All right. Very cool. Any questions about note taking before I move on? Anything you need explained further or any questions at all about it? Doesn't look like it. All right, cool. Let's move on to images then. So Hunchly does a few things as it relates to images. The first is everywhere you browse, Hunchly is actually extracting every image off of the page, hashing it, and storing it in a separate folder. So it does this primarily for those folks who might be working in, for example, child abuse material, where they can take all of those images and push them to their image analysis platform, for example, or even look at hashes on its own. So that's the first step. Now, the second thing it does, and it does that in the background, by the way, the second thing it does is it actually looks at those images for Exif metadata. So if you're not familiar with Exif metadata, it is simply invisible information that is stamped into photographs, documents, and other materials that describe that photo. Okay, so by clicking on the Exif badge here, we can actually see this picture I took was taken in 2015. Allegedly, I say allegedly because you would have to actually like follow up on trying to determine that this was taken in 2015. We can also see device that took it. So this is a BlackBerry. I was the only like human being alive still using a BlackBerry there probably. And this can be really useful. So if you ever want to test this, and I'm actually, let me just switch my settings back if I didn't already on my page capture, major changes only. Good. And I'll just punt my browser. And I want to show you a great test site for this, assuming it still works, is Ars Technica. It's a tech news site, but they have Exif metadata galore. In fact, the one demo that I was doing, we actually were able to geolocate William Shatner because the journalist who took the picture of him after a space flight, I can't even remember for what company it was, they took a picture of William Shatner along with other people out like in the middle of nowhere. And the journalist actually had GPS coordinates turned on, geolocation turned on their phone, which stamped the GPS coordinates into the photograph, and those coordinates showed up in our Hunchly dashboard. So we'll just take a look here. Sometimes it can take a little while for all of the images to get processed, but yeah, here, these are all from Ars Technica. So you can see it's a great way to go like explore some of the data that you can get from here. Sometimes there's like descriptors in there, GPS coordinates. There can be all kind. Oh, look, there's GPS coordinates in this one. So this actually tells you if we find GPS coordinates stamped into a photo. This was by accident, but handy. This will give you a Google Maps link that will tell you where this photograph was allegedly taken. So again, very cool. In particular, for those of you doing dark web work, this can be really useful because if somebody accidentally leaves metadata turned on and they upload a photograph of anything to the dark web, that can be a potential way to find additional clues or potentially to de-anonymize who is running that hidden service or that Tor site if they leave metadata in images. So if you're browsing around the dark web on Tor with Hunchly enabled, you can actually find some additional clues that way. All right, so that's the Exif metadata extraction. That happens all on its own automatically. But what you can also do in Hunchly is you can caption images. So if we go back here, we'll just pick one of these. And now some websites as well, they'll kind of either disable right click, or on Instagram, for example, they actually put a transparent layer of, or they used to put a transparent layer over top of images so that you couldn't right click on them and have your browser know it was an image. In this case, this is an image. And what I can do is in the Hunchly menu, I can add a caption to it. So again, if you're doing asset tracing and you're like finding pictures of boats and cars and that kind of thing, very useful. If you're kind of working up a profile on an individual, having multiple pictures of them can be useful as well. So you can just add a caption in here. This is a smokestack. Hit enter. And what this will do is in your dashboard, what you're going to get is in your caption images, you'll have that picture and the caption, as well as you can go and look what page this came from. So you're able to go and view the capture that was connected to this actual image. So again, depending on the work you're doing, this can be really useful to caption images as you're going along. Again, we even have conservation officers doing anti-poaching work, for example. Same thing, useful to take pictures and caption them. Later on, we can use them in our reports and export them as well. Okay, so I covered a lot here as it relates to images, Exif metadata extraction. Does anybody have any questions about any of those things? I'm going to wait a little bit longer to make sure that if folks have questions that they can ask them. I'm going to do my customary sip of coffee, and then we'll carry on. All right, perfect. So we have a couple of questions here. First question is related to, I've had a couple of Facebook pages captured, and when I checked them in page review, I didn't see a profile picture or messages. Okay, so with Facebook, you can run into the situation, again, where Facebook will lazy load or unload images. So what you can get is a profile picture that doesn't load in properly. Now, I've had this happen to me as well, and happen like in a non like consistent manner. And I'm not entirely sure why Facebook has this issue sometimes, why it loads and lazy loads images before the capture is fully able to grab them, for example. So what I'll often do, and by the way, we file, some of these are actually kind of beyond the Hunchly capture. It's more to do with how the browser's loading things, and we file tickets with the Google Chromium team. So what I'll often do is I will take a look at the mobile version. So m.facebook.com. The site can't be reached. Oh, there was a www in front. Let's try this. Okay, so sometimes I get better luck with the mobile capture of Facebook here. So let's take a look at this. Okay, much cleaner. All right. And I also have used in the past, there's this very old interface that Facebook uses to capture, so that people who are, say, in developing countries or on a satellite link, that it's M basic. So this is the very low bandwidth version of Facebook that allows you to see things in a very stripped down manner, but all of the information is identical. It's not like some different copy of Facebook. It's just simply how you view that data. So if you run into issues with Facebook, use m.facebook.com or even mbasic.facebook.com to go through posts. Now the basic one, the only trick is that it will not have a bunch of dynamic content like comments and other things. So depending on what you're doing, you may want to use the mobile version. All right, hopefully that helps. That one question for tags: is it possible to put in emojis as a tag? So for a tag, I'm not sure that you would be able to use emojis in a tag. Something that I will actually have to get back to you on. So feel free, I'll just send you my email address. Actually, I'll send you our team's email address, support.hunch.ly, for questions on emoji. All right, I will send that over to you. So that's a great question. I've never used emojis for tags. If you meant selectors, it's again another great question, as I'm not sure that Hunchly would be able to decode the selector in the same way, but something to definitely send to our team. I just sent you their email address. Awesome. Is it easy to push photo Exif search engine? So my apologies, Dan, if you could explain a bit more your use case there when you say push photo Exif search engines, or kind of what you're getting at. If you could give me an example, that would be great, and then I will try to answer that question for you more wholesomely. Awesome. Oh, okay, like TinEye. Yeah, so there's no reverse searching from Hunchly in your images or your Exif images here. But we just had this discussion internally, as we've had a ticket open for quite a long time, about, do we allow you to kind of one click send this off to TinEye, Yandex, or Google Lens now, I guess, is really the other one. We do have some kind of useful one-click options that work the same way here. If you click the clock icon, for example, in the history view, you get convenience clicks to the Wayback Machine or the Google Cache version of the page, for example. So Google Cache doesn't have it. Even Wayback Machine might not have it. We're looking at doing the same thing for being able to reverse search. So I'm assuming you would like that, and I can put a vote in. Perfect. Great. Excellent. Okay, perfect. Yeah, and that's really how Hunchly is built. We really like take what our customers want and need. It's not about us. We rarely come up with new features on our own. That's not really how we work. It's usually people request it, and once the requests get to a point that we need to build it in, that's kind of how we do things. It's very much a product by democracy. Great. Awesome. Cool. So let's talk about attachments. So attachments are anything in Hunchly that are not web pages. So think PDFs, docx, Excel sheets, video files, for example. Hunchly does not extract video. We unfortunately, you really, as an extension that's built for Google Chrome and distributed through the Chrome store, we can't do that because Google forbids the ripping of video, particularly from YouTube. Even though there's a number of services that do it, they could easily just ban the Hunchly extension, and that would be a bad day for us and thousands of other people. So how do we handle attachments otherwise, or files that don't kind of fit the usual, this is a web page? So there's one way, which is we can add them manually. So if you have a source that sends you a video or picture, or if you've got like a malware sample, whatever it might be, you can add them manually. So I can click this add button, and I'll grab an image from my desktop, and I'll add it into my case. So the great thing is that Hunchly will automatically hash that file. So if you need to disclose it for court, you've got a hash ready for you. We can annotate it as well, and we can also view it. So by clicking on the file right here, read this warning because it is important. If you've downloaded a virus or added it in, or you've received a nasty document that's got a backdoor in it, once you click OK, your system's going to open the file. So it is important to kind of, from a security perspective, to think about that. So I'm going to click OK. In this case, it's just me bottle feeding a baby raccoon. There's my thumb. You can get an idea how big that raccoon is based on the size of my thumb. Very tiny. She recovered and got released to the wild. So very cool. I can actually add a description here and say, baby raccoon being bottle fed. Great. And I do recommend that you actually annotate your files rather than just having, 20 files in your attachments. Throwing a quick annotation in takes a second, keeps your case more organized. All right. Now, when we're out actually browsing, one thing that we generally want to be able to do is when we encounter a Word document or some other file, we do want to be able to have Hunchly just pick that file up and automatically store it for us. Or at least that's how I generally investigate. So again, returning to our settings panel, attach downloads. Now, for security reasons, we have it turned off by default. So this is really just to prevent the general user from shooting themselves in the foot. So I'm going to turn attach downloads on. I'm going to hit save. Again, I'll just do this quick restart here. And I'm going to do just a quick docx, and I'll say poaching. All right, so let's just, people not poaching. I don't know what this is, but I'm going to download it. Cool. And let's go back to our dashboard. And now you can see we have it automatically picked that download up for us. It told us exactly where this file came from. So we have a URL, a hash, and I can make a note of it. So much the same way if you're doing YouTube videos and you need to use a YouTube ripper to pull a file down, I'll often take a note of the YouTube video, use the downloader, pull the video file into Hunchly, and then in my note, I will just take a note of where it came from so that I can easily cross-reference it from my notes into my attachments. All right, so that's attachments. Very nice way to kind of keep those external files all in one place for you. And if you saw our previous webinar where myself and Andrew Fordred used Maltego together along with Hunchly, he actually, when he's done with his Maltego work, he takes his Maltego graph and he actually saves it in his Hunchly case as an attachment and then exports his Hunchly case from there, and his Maltego graph goes out with it. All right, cool. Any questions around attachments? All right, we're running a bit long here. We've had lots of great questions so far. That's awesome. I don't see any questions popping up. We'll quickly talk about the searches panel. This is really telling you where have you done keyword searches and what did you search for. It often will tell you if you're spending all your time on Google, as a good investigator, you should expand your searches to other search engines. So for example, by running the same search in Yandex, we actually see that the top result in Yandex is for, it's a pirated copy of one of my books. So this is vastly different than the results from Google. So this searches panel can be really useful as well if you ever get stuck in an investigation. You're like, I don't even know what else to look for. This is a great place to look to see what you've already been hunting around for, and maybe you need to expand your reach into other search engines. So that we are monitoring all the major search engines, all the major social media platforms, and what keywords you're punching into them so that you can go back and review them. All right, cool. I will move on, talk about data. So the data tab is where we are finding little pieces of information in web pages and pulling them out because they can be useful sources of intelligence for expanding your searches, expanding your investigations. So for example, we'll extract Google Analytics codes. All right, by clicking this little blue button right here, this will actually apply it as a filter in my history view. So I can now see every page that had that Google Analytics code on it. This can be useful if you're trying to track down domains, people who control multiple domains. Their whois information might be protected, but their Google Analytics codes might be the same. Help you to start drawing some connections between them. All right. There's also things like email addresses. Okay, you can see one from Ars Technica, one from the archive. All right. Same thing. What we're trying to do here is just bring data forward to you so that you can explore it and see if there are leads, or maybe you can run these email addresses or tracking codes into other tools to help you see if there are other sources of information that you can go and look for. All right. Very cool. Okay. So We have about 6 minutes left in the hour. Again, I'm going to be on beyond that, but I'm going to try to cover the key exports that I think most people want to know about. So the first one is, how do I export pages? Right? Just pages themselves. I don't need like a big report. I just want to get one page or maybe a handful of pages out. So there's a few ways that we can do this. If you're doing a quick capture and you're like, I just want to export this one page or maybe a handful of pages, right? I want to export these 2 pages, selecting them in your history view, and then going page export. So let's select the desktop folder. Cool. So what Hunchly will do is it will produce both the MHTML and the PDF. Okay, so we see here. Now the PDF has, and the font might be a bit small. Let's see if I can zoom in here. Not without, no, it won't let me do that. All right, there we go. Maybe this will be better. Great. So in a PDF, you actually get a bit of metadata about the capture itself on the first page. And then scrolling down, you'll see content below. Now, PDFs, as you can see, and often you've probably already encountered this as an investigator, PDFs and web pages were never designed to be interchangeable. They're not really the same thing. So you will get oddities sometimes where a PDF just doesn't look like the actual web page itself. This is where having those MHTML captures are useful, because the MHTML captures will be a much more accurate representation. So this is just using Microsoft Edge to open this file. Every Windows user has Microsoft Edge. And this, of course, is exactly what we saw when we browsed to this page, right? Whereas the PDF kind of looked a bit messy. And it's really just simply because the conversion from web page to PDF is just not a perfect science. So that's why we produce both, so that you're able to send both if you need to send off a quick page capture. Okay, so again, that was just done here by checking off pages that I wanted to export and using the page export button. All right. Now, the other thing you can do is in this custom export menu, you can say page export from here. This will give you a little more flexibility. So maybe I want to do all the pages in my case, kick them all out, maybe just the ones tagged social media or important. Same thing, it will just select those pages, export them to PDF and MHTML, and then you're off and running. Okay, so very quick ways to export pages. You've got the option directly from the history view, and then you've got the option here from the page view. And again, this is custom export, page export, pick your poison, and Hunchly will take care of the rest. Okay, so that's how we export pages themselves. The really critical button here is this export case button. So what this will allow you to do is actually export your entire case. This is all of your case data, all of your images, all your page, everything goes into a zip file. Now, this zip file right here, you can back up on a server, you can actually send to a colleague, but inside of it, there's actually some useful little tools here that I'll show you. Just let it unzip. Cool. All right, so everything is clearly labeled. So if you wanted to see your attachments, they're in there. Your screenshots for your notes, everything is in there. But there's also this report. So if I open this in Edge or Chrome as well, this is like a little dashboard. So if you needed to send this to a colleague, or let's say you got to send it to a prosecutor who doesn't have Hunchly and they do want to kind of go through what you captured, you can send them just that zip file. And this report actually has a slimmed down version of your dashboard. It allows you to kind of click in and see what was captured. So you can see here, this is actually loading directly from this zip file. It's got no internet connection required. We're not pulling this from the live google.com or anything like that. You can see my highlighting in place from the selectors, right? And so your notes are in here as well, photos you've captioned, and your attachments. Okay? Very useful. So that is your case export. Now, the other nice thing is that often when we're working on cases today, we might not have a court hearing, or we might not actually have to do anything for a few months. So back that case up, and then what you can do is when you need to review it again, you can import it by clicking the plus button, import case. You can import it as a new case. You can merge it with another case. So if there's two of you kind of working together, you can actually bring in your colleague's case and merge it with your own if you want. Pick the zip file, hit import, go grab a coffee, let it import all the files and everything back in, and then you can go through your case again, or even pick it up and continue investigating if you have to do more work on it. So this is really useful as well. So again, just that green button, export your case, back it up. I do recommend doing that. Like I do it frequently when I'm working on stuff actively. At the end of the day, I export my case, throw it onto my backup server right away, and definitely it will save you some headache at some point. Backup, backup, backup. Always back up your stuff. All right, cool. So the last thing we'll cover very briefly, we're at the top of the hour, and don't worry if you have to leave, the recording will be emailed out at the end as well. You can check our YouTube channel, that's where they all go. We will talk about a report builder. This will probably be one of the very last demos I do with our old report builder. So our new report builder is coming in the next couple of weeks. Our team is just in the final stages of closing up the last few tickets. It will go into our long-running QA process and some early acceptance testing by some of our customers, and you will get a brand new report builder. This report builder is our old one. So since you're still using the current version of Hunchly, I'm going to show you this, but again, this will probably be one of the very last demos where you'll see it. Now, a report builder is a very quick way to build simple reports. If you just need to kick out a one-pager or summarize some of the stuff that you've captured, you need to send it to a colleague. Very quick way of doing this. Everything is drag and drop from the left-hand side of the screen to the right. So what we would start with is we can say like investigating Justin is the title of our report. We already have one section available to us here. I'm going to rename this to executive summary. All right. Now maybe in that executive summary, I'm going to drag and drop a text paragraph in and just say Justin is definitely guilty of all crimes. All right, perfect. Seems reasonable. You can save that text. Great. Now what I need to do, and again, this is changing in the upcoming Hunchly, but I want to be able to just put in some notes and images that I've captioned. So this is a general way that we can build our reports. All right. So for our notes and our caption images, we need a new section where we can drop them in. So I'm going to call this our evidence section. Now, typically, this is my workflow. I just grab all the notes. You can pick them one by one if you want, if you don't want all of them. And I grab my caption images. And that's it, because I already have a report template in Word that I've used for years. So then all I do is I'll export this to Microsoft Word, and then I'll just open my Hunchly report on the left. I open my regular report template on the right, and I'm just moving over content from my Hunchly case into it. So that's how I work. Everybody has different methods for doing this. And again, if you're whipping up a quick one-pager for a colleague or an editor or a client, you can set it to PDF, hit export, pick the desktop again. Cool. We can go take a look at this report. It's right here. Very simple report structure, investigating Justin, the day it was prepared, table of contents. Okay, there's our amazing executive summary. And then we get into the actual notes. So the notes contain page hashes, URL. You may or may not want this stuff. This is why I use the Word document version, just simply because I can remove some of these if I need to, as well as our other note, and then our caption image right here. Okay, and for images, it will also produce the Exif metadata if there was any. You can see the Exif metadata right here. So it is a very basic reporting structure. In the new report builder, there's a lot more flexibility on how to get stuff in and out of your reports and reorder them. You're able to build kind of more complex reports as well. And it gives you a bit better kind of picture of what you're going to see in the final product. Same thing, the new report builder will also be able to kick out to PDF and to DocX as well. So that's how you can create a quick report in Hunchly. Just like that, drag and drop from the left to the right. Okay. Very simple. And again, this will be like a relic of the past very soon as our new release is getting very close. Awesome. All right, let me see if we have some question and answers. Awesome. Yep, definitely we'll be sending the recording out for sure. Great question. Can I select pages from the page review for the report? So currently you cannot. This is something that in the new report builder, and again, I'd have to check with my team. If you'd like to send me or my team an email, actually, Falco. So I'll just send you the report builder questions. All right. I actually, for the new one, I cannot recall if we do a full page capture insertion into the report or not. I know the first iteration is really to give people a much better version of what they have now. And we tend to try to release things early that are better for our customers and then collect a bunch of feedback so that we can then continue to incrementally improve it based on their feedback. Definitely feel free to reach out to our team and ask on that one because I actually don't know the answer to that right now, Falco. All right, great. You're very welcome, Terry. Was there anyone else that had questions about Hunchly in general or anything else that I can help to answer based on what I've covered today? I haven't covered every single nook and cranny to Hunchly. There are still some things there that you can use, like the to-do list, and there are some settings you can play with. We also have a great knowledge base loaded with information from getting started, which is an entire series of videos, how to get going with Hunchly. So support.hunch.ly. I will send that into the chat box so everybody has it. So you'll see your chat window light up. Knowledge base. There you go. We also have our YouTube channel, which is just youtube.com. See Hunchly. We have a bunch of great stuff here. In our video list, you will see everything from mobile malware analysis that we did, amazing new things in Hunchly. This is a real fun one. Maltego, regular desktop training like this, dark web investigations. So we run them kind of every week or every second week. I'll be doing another dark web one here in the next few weeks. I think people are really always interested in that. And then if you're really adventurous, we also have Hunchly training that allows you or teaches you how to write code to do automation over top of Hunchly. So anything from actually some of it is codeless, even how to have people insert URLs into a shared spreadsheet on Google Sheets, all the way to some really powerful automation techniques with Hunchly and some Python. Again, I've covered some of that in YouTube videos where there's like an automatic YouTube video downloader and done a bunch of fancy stuff there. That's all on our YouTube channel as well. So again, I'll just pop those in. YouTube is here. YouTube, and I will also give you our training site. Is there any other questions? Doesn't look like it. All right, when is the next version coming out? So it should be, today's the 2nd. We're looking at about the 3rd week of February. We think it should be roughly in that region. We don't force releases on a schedule. It's more based on kind of our current estimate with verifying all the new tickets and making sure the bug fixes are in that we need. So that is really, I'm hopeful about the 3rd week of February. All right. All right, question. Yeah, no problem, Daniel. All right, next question. Can I use my external hard drive? Yeah, you totally can use your external hard drive, definitely. So what you can do is you can, I believe it's in here. Yeah, so in the installation section, changing Hunchly's data folder. So this will allow you to put it on your external hard drive if you want to. Now, just a note here that you'll want to make sure you have a high-speed solid state drive and make sure it's over a high-speed USB connection. Otherwise, you'll just see a slowdown as Hunchly it will just be much slower for Hunchly to write those pages to that disk. So I'm going to send that to everyone as well, that link to changing Hunchly's data folder if you need to move to a USB drive, for example. All right, well, I don't see any more questions coming in. Thank you all so much for coming out today, showing up, for all the great questions. If there's anything else that any of you need, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team, support@hunch.ly. All right. And if you need to send any questions to me directly, It is just justin@hunch.ly. And if I can't help answer your question, there's definitely somebody on my team that can. And again, thank you so much. Keep your eyes peeled on your email as we send out other webinar announcements, and feel free to go poking around our YouTube channel that you can go see some of the other ones we've done. All right. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye.